Hi, everybody, and welcome to the DogCo Secrets Podcast. My name is Michelle Kline. I am your host, and I am also the founder of DogCo Launch, where pet care companies come to grow and scale. And today I want to address a question that you may have had to yourself at some point in time, which is, should I take on a partner for my pet care business? So a part owner, someone that is coming in to ownership with you to be responsible and to help you grow and run your business. And today I want to address whether or not that might be the right next step for you. So let's get into it. Get this question on occasion, like, does partnership make sense in this business model as I'm looking to grow my business? And my default answer tends to be no. But I do want to nuance that answer a little bit because I think the question in and of itself is valid. Even though 99% of the time, I do not think that going into a co-ownership situation makes sense. But I want to give more context and I want to give a little bit more clarity as to why. I've gotten this question over the years as I have had more and more companies go through DogCo, more and more companies that I've just connected with in the broader industry. And I understand why, on paper, this may sound like a good idea. When we are looking at business is inherently, like, just the thing that business is risk. Now, risk and reward are hopefully correlated, and the better we get at making strategic decisions in business, the more and more that will happen. But business will never be without risk. It's just inherent to what the machine is risk. So I think that the desire for partnership oftentimes comes out of a place of wanting to really mitigate risk, of wanting to just make this something that feels safer, that feels like a shared burden. Entrepreneurship can be incredibly lonely. And oftentimes I see people try to use partnership to solve that gap. I think that is a legitimate gap. I think that is a gap that makes sense. I think that is a gap that a lot of people struggle with and a lot of people have. I don't think partnership is the right way to solve it, though. I think when we try and use partnership to fill that gap, more often than not, we end up trying to solve the wrong problem with the wrong solution. And I think the reality is we are never going to be able to eliminate risk. And so oftentimes when people bring on a partner, what they actually end up doing is reducing reward because there are just more people to split that bucket with, rather than actually minimizing risk. In many ways, you increase risk when you bring on a partner. And I'll explain more about that. But maybe before I get into all the reasons I wouldn't consider it, maybe let me back up for a minute and give a bit of a precursor. So I am not a fan of, nor do I very often use the word should. I believe it is your business. I believe that the whole point of entrepreneurship is you get to build what you want in the world. And maybe your vision of your business does include a strategic partner. So I'm not saying that it doesn't ever make sense, but for me, there are some really specific criteria that I would need to have in order to consider a partnership with someone. And this is a framework I heard from someone else, and I don't remember who it was. I wish that I could. It was on another podcast. It might have been Tim Ferriss, who's another podcast that I listen to pretty regularly. Whoever it was, they were talking about this framework for partnership, and they were saying there are 3 reasons that a partnership would make sense. I have really tested mentally this framework over the years. I have seen a lot of businesses go through partnerships, and I think this is held really, really true. So I want to talk about this framework of when it might make sense. And if you're considering a partner, I would encourage you to be thinking about your specific scenario. And at the end of this podcast, I am going to give a couple, hey, if you're going to do this, here's some safeguards to put in place. So hang in there till the end, should that be something you're considering. Okay, so the 3 things that someone would need to have in order for a partnership to make sense per this framework, but I think it makes a lot of sense. And they don't have to have all 3, just one of the 3. So number 1, they need to have a specific knowledge set that you do not have. So when you bring a partner into your business, you split the reward. So the reward becomes smaller for each person involved. So in order to do that, we need to see a disproportionate return off of partnership than we reasonably think we could have achieved without having that partner. That is when a partnership makes sense. One of the ways that we could get to that disproportionate return is if somebody has knowledge that you do not have. For example, if someone who had never owned a pet care company ever wanted to start a dog walking company and came to me and asked me to be a partner with them, that probably would make sense for them. And that's not to say like I'm amazing or blah, 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 but like I've been in the industry for almost a decade. I've grown my own company to 25 staff. I've now worked with 300 companies in the pet care industry. Like I can help you grow a bit. It's the core of what I do. I can help you grow a business faster than if you did it without me. I am not accepting partnerships, so please and, don't approach me about that. I love DogCo. DogCo is the only thing I'm going to be doing right now. And it is more than enough to fill my time. But just an example, like in that very specific scenario, partnership would probably make sense to that person. They would get where they wanted to go quicker doing that with me than if they didn't. Because I have very specific knowledge to how to do this because I have already done it. That would probably make sense for them. The second scenario that can make partnership make sense is if one person is bringing money to invest in the business that the other person does not have access to. If that is going to let you skyrocket your growth arc and get to market faster and grow more exponentially, might make sense. I do think in our specific business model, that is less applicable. Where I think that specifically makes sense is if you have to do a big upfront investment in like inventory or in machinery or in software prior to being able to create revenue. That's where I think either raising money or having somebody join your team who's bringing money to the table, kind of buying their equity in that way, that can make sense. That can help you go further, faster. But again, in our business model, I see this as slightly less applicable. It's like there are not that many startup costs to this business model, which is one of the pros and cons. You hear people talk about there's so many hobbyists and things like that in our industry. There's a very low barrier to getting started with pet care. Now, the scaling journey is difficult, very logistically complex. Our industry overall faces a lot of burnout as a difficulty. There are very few financial barriers to starting this business model. I see this category as less applicable, but those are the two so far. So they either bring knowledge to the table that you don't have, or they bring money to invest into the business to help it get further faster. The third category where partnership may make sense is when somebody is bringing disproportionate time to the table than you. Now, I want you to be careful with this one because time is only valuable if you use it correctly. And so you want to make sure that there is still a lot of like trust and a lot of like understanding between the two of you of your roles, where that time should be going. But this is an example of where partnership can make sense. Like if somebody brings to the table, I can put in time that you do not have, and that will get us further, faster. Partnership can be a good tool in that specific scenario. Overall, I still think that partnership is incredibly risky. I think that it should be done under only very specific circumstances. I think it would be better for many companies to consider doing a revenue share without ownership if there's someone that you want to incentivize to grow with the business and to help carry the load. But if partnership is attractive to you because you want to feel like there's someone else in it with you, I think there are other ways we can achieve that without diminishing the reward that you're working towards in your business. The reality is a lot of partnerships fail. And I hope this isn't coming across too negative. I think if you have a partner in your business and it's a good thing, it can be an amazing thing. So I do want to make that clear. Like I have seen partnerships that are beautiful and healthy where everyone's carrying their load and they work really, really well together. I've also seen a lot of partnerships that just fall apart. There's a lot of conflict. And you've probably heard this phrase, but if you have a business partnership dissolve, it's basically like getting divorced. It is financially expensive. It is contentious often, but partnership can be an amazing thing. I would just say it needs to serve a higher purpose than filling that emotional gap. Because there are easier and cheaper ways to kind of fill that emotional piece of this is scary. I feel like I'm doing it alone. Getting into a community with other business owners going through the same thing, that can be huge, whether that's DogCo or a different program. Getting in the same room, maybe going to one of the conferences. DogCo Summit is currently selling tickets, shameless plug, to get around other people who get it. There are actions like that that can help fill this gap if you are struggling with the temptation of, I just want to feel like there is somebody in this with me. I would encourage you, partnership in and of itself is risky. It does not diminish business risk. I think it actually adds complexity to your business in a way that is in and of itself risky. So your reason for partnership needs to have some type of disproportionate return that you have a reasonable degree of certainty you would hit with this individual coming into your business as a partner, rather than if you didn't. And that needs to mutually make sense for both parties. So yeah. Okay, so I said I was going to do a couple tips for if you're considering partnership, how to do this well, or at least with kind of safeguards in place. So number one, take the time to have the conversations and to document, ideally an operating agreement or even a legal agreement. I think that would be really wise. What happens if one day one of us wants out? To talk about before there are heated stakes, before there's emotion, to talk about what will happen if this ever doesn't work out. I think that's a really important conversation to have, because the reality is both of you probably won't do this business for the rest of your life. It might not even be a contentious fallout. It might just be, I have another opportunity, or I'm going to move. Then I just wouldn't be like a true partner to you in this business. So having the conversations, getting agreements in place for what happens if one or both of us don't want to do this in the future, taking the time to plan that out, I think is really, really, really wise. And then the other is taking the time to build advisors and mentors outside of just your partnership that you can lean on if there ever are moments of contention, if there ever are moments of conflict, so that you can get wisdom from other people on the best way to move forward. I have found that taking the time to seek wisdom from other people almost always nets a positive for me. And I think especially because partnership can be so relationally murky in some ways, it is wise to invest in relationships and mentors who can help steer you both on the right path if things start to go sideways. So taking the time to build those relationships. Jessica Berry, who was on the podcast recently, we talked about your board of advisors. Who's on that board? What are the voices, the inputs that you are letting into your business? This wise to do also if you don't have a partner, by the way. But if you're bringing on a business partner, for sure, talking about and identifying, like, if we hit a sticking point, who do we bring in? Who's here to help us? Who are we getting insight and wisdom from? I think is a great move. So whatever you do, I am cheering you on.